This video is brought to you by GameMaker, and if you've ever wanted to get into game development, GameMaker does this really crazy thing where it's free. Just start making and only pay when you want to release your game to the world commercially.
It's fast, it's user-friendly, and there's easy-to-follow tutorials, plus a dedicated community to help answer even my questions. How make man jump? GameMaker is a 2D game engine that's helped bring some of yours and my favorite recent experiences to life, like UFO 50, Chicory, Anton Blast, and of course, Yahtzee's own Starstruck Vagabond.
Ooh, we talking about GameMaker? I love that program, it's so easy to use. As well as Starstruck Vagabond, I also used it to make all 12 projects in my 12 games in 12 months Dev Diary challenge. And I couldn't believe how much sex I got out of that. None. I got none at all. Which I couldn't believe.
So what are you waiting for? Head on over to the GameMaker link in the description and start cracking away today, because we want to play your game.
Yeah, looking through this list, I'm seeing one of you made Armpit Fart Tycoon, and I've got several questions for you. Hello, and welcome to Dev Heads, of the podcast focused on the ins, outs, and goings on of game development, with hosts' experience ranging from indie, double to AAA. I do this every week. Why did I mess that up? I'm Jay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hi.
And as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Tina.
Hello, I represent AAA. Worked on Call of Duty, God of War, Apex, those kinds of things.
Those big guns. Mikey, my other co-host.
Hi, I'm Mikey. I represent AA. I worked on Insurgency, Black Mesa, and some AA projects like those, I guess.
I do feel like Black Mesa has
They're more
best
indie.
hype. No, but it's
but they've got
badass.
Yeah, I've had many times in public where I tell somebody, "Oh, I worked on Insurgency," since I was lead game designer, and I did all the voiceover and the writing. The first one, like, "Oh, cool," and I say, "I also did Black Mesa," and they go, "Oh shit, you were on Black Mesa? Whoa!" Because they got that brand, they got that Valve association.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
A big deal.
And our guest has some pretty cool history too with games.
Oh yeah.
Yes, he does, which I was candidly gushing about, Paul. Paul, do you want to go ahead and maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Nice to see you all. Excited about the conversation today. I'm Paul Hellquist. I'm the creative director and co-founder at Stray Kite Studios.
Hell yeah. And what is the project you're currently working on?
So we are currently very excited about our project, which is called Wartorn, and we're in Next Fest right now. So if anybody wants to go check it out, we would love for you to do so. It's called Wartorn. It's a real-time tactics game. The demo right now is very focused on combat, but we've got a whole bunch of other parts of the game that we're excited to talk about as well. It's kind of this journey story. It's really exciting.
The first thing I thought of when I started playing your game was, one, I was excited about the combat and getting into that. But my first thought, which was really dumb, which was, damn, I'm surprised you guys got the name Wartorn, and how a game hadn't used that before.
Right?
So I was like, this is a sick name.
Yeah, we did a search, and there is some old game from the early 2000s that capitalized the T. And we didn't know exactly what it was, but it was a very small project. But yeah, I love that name. It's very punchy and easy to remember. It does give us a little bit of problems on Instagram because it gets blocked. You can't say the word war.
Oh, really? Can't say war.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Is that across all social media or just like a few?
Facebook and
Instagram?
Insta have been a problem. So some part of Meta's, keeping people from talking about terrible things, I guess.
Yeah.
You should say War, Natalie, and Torn.
That'll work.
Wait, who's that? I don't even know.
Oh my god, don't tell me that you don't know who that is.
Natalie who? I'm sorry, I'm not as cultured as you, Tina.
Just to get it out of the way, Paul, what games have you previously worked on?
Yeah, so I got my start. I've been doing this for way too long at this point. I still feel like a young guy, but now when I say I started in the 90s, people are like, the what now?
Oh, God.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I got my start in '98. I started in quality assurance at Electronic Arts. I did
What
that.
game?
Okay. My Electronic Arts resume is like top of the line. Things like
Hell yeah.
Future Cop LAPD.
No shit. You worked on Future Cop?
Yeah, PlayStation 1 game. That was the first game I ever tested.
Why didn't we put that in the title of this podcast? That's the draw.
Hell yeah.
I'm texting the editor-in-chief right now and telling him.
We got
Soviet
next.
Strike Legacy, right? That was from that series they did a Future Cop
on the
one.
Nuclear Strike engine, and they like rebranded it. And now I feel really bad about a game where you are a policeman driving a mech, murdering people.
Oh God.
Amazing.
Interesting.
Oh, it's a different time than it was back then.
Yes.
Definitely the 90s.
So yeah, I did Future Cop one summer. This was while I was at university. So I went out to University of New Hampshire. So I drove all my ass all the way to San Francisco, tested games. Yeah, tested games for 3 months. Drove all the way back, went back to school.
Dedication, man.
Wow.
Holy hell. And look, the fruits of your labor.
Damn.
Yep. So yeah, first summer I did Future Cop, and then the second summer I did a game called Skydive, which was on their budget brand. And I don't know if it still holds this, but last I checked, it was the lowest rated game in PC gamer history.
Oh no. Why? What happened?
It was terrible. It was it was terrible.
That's very candid of you.
It got a 5%.
Wow.
Gamer.
Oh, wow.
Oh man.
5 out of 5 stars, 5%.
Look,
And that's at the top of your resume, right? That's at the very top.
So yeah, that was the second summer I did Skydive. I remember myself and one of the other testers that I was very friendly with. We were sitting there one day and trying to like do our work, and we were just like, oh my god, this game is so bad. And he looks over at me and is like, this is like a glorified green saber.
Oh my god.
No. Paul, I have good news. I just Googled it. You're no longer the lowest at 5%. Mad Dog McCree got a 4%.
4%.
Mad
Sweet.
Dog
Yeah.
McCree.
I'm glad that you could hear this and know the truth.
So I followed up that was the early summer. The game was very small. And like I said, it was a budget title and all that kind of thing. So it was very small. So that was only for about a month. So the second half of the summer, I was the tester on Ted Nugent Wild Hunting Adventure.
hell yeah.
Never heard of that.
What an IP. I've never heard of it either.
What an IP.
Yeah, it was during
the Ted Nugent.
Yeah, the Ted Nugent. It was during that like Deer Hunter was huge, right? And so everyone was on the like hunting bandwagon.
Yeah, Cabela's style kind of
thing. The Cabela's was big, and so this was EA's again another on that budget brand
hell yeah
attempt to get into the hunting scene. And so yeah, that was a difficult summer. In terms of, I didn't get to play every day the most top of the line game. So that was my testing career at Electronic Arts.
Pretty start though.
Yeah. And then while I was there, I was modding. I was making Half-Life levels and Quake 2 and things like that. And I did have awesome access to the EA company store. So I could get games for like $10, which was pretty sweet. And I picked up System Shock 2 and loved it and applied to Irrational as a result. Sending in my mod work and got a job at Irrational Games, which was back home for me in Boston. So I went back across the country.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And got a job at Irrational as a level designer. I was there for many years. Eventually became the lead designer at Irrational and was the lead on SWAT 4. That was 2004. And then was the lead designer on the original BioShock while I was there. And then after BioShock, I moved to Dallas, which I still am in the Dallas area. Joined Gearbox, worked for them for about 7 or 8 years. Worked on a Duke Nukem title that got canceled when 3D Realms kind of exploded. And then moved on to the Borderlands team and worked on the first Borderlands and Zombie Island.
Love that game.
Yeah, Zombie Island, General Knox, all of those DLCs, and then
Love
was
that.
the creative director on Borderlands 2. And did that for what's that, 2012 that came out. Worked on some other things there until about 2014. Went across town and joined Robot Entertainment, a smaller studio. Their franchise, which is still going. It recently had a game come out, is Orcs Must Die. So I worked on the Orcs Must Die franchise for a little bit, and then founded Stray Kite with my partner Chauvin.
Hell yeah!
I gotta
That's
ask you,
awesome.
Paul, because I'm a big Half-Life dork. Worked on Black Mesa, of course. Which Half-Life mods or levels did you do?
Probably nothing you ever played. It was stuff that I was just doing on my own. When I was at EA working on Future Cop, it was really special and cool that the QA department at that time was in the same basically pit as the development team, which was pretty rare. So I got to have a lot of interaction with the developers on the team while I was there, and I got friendly with one of the level designers and was kind of like, how do I get to do what you do? And at the time, that was modding was just, getting to be pretty big, and people were mostly making multiplayer maps for Quake or Half-Life or whatever. And he told me, probably the best piece of advice I got, make single player content, because at that time, all the jobs were for single player games. Like anything professional was single player, and the multiplayer was kind of like and we do a couple of maps, and that's the multiplayer, whereas today there's all these amazing games that are focused on multiplayer. That wasn't the case back then. So making multiplayer maps wasn't as good a resume as making single player stuff. So I made it was like an 8 map campaign in Half-Life that was like, you were trapped in a ship and it was sinking, and like using all of Half-Life's tech where you kind of like hit that like hitch and then the next level like loads and all that stuff from back in the day. So I liked it.
What was it called? That sounds cool.
I don't know. I called it like the sinking of the USS Adams or something like that. I was living in Adams, Mass, so I just
That's awesome.
Add that in there. So I was trying to do all kinds of crap that the engine completely wasn't supposed to do. Like there's no liquid, there's no physics, but I'm like, putting a water texture on a wall and like moving it down a hallway to like have it be like the hallway's getting flooded and things like that.
That's cool.
You're making it work, man. That's that gumption or that drive that got you on the projects that you did. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's what mods are all about, right? Just working with what you got.
So you started in 98.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even count how many game console launches you were a part of.
Like I said, first game I worked on was PlayStation 1. Here we are at PS5, right? So there's
shit, yeah.
And every launch is some form of chaos for the dev teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dang. That's crazy. I mean, that amazing career so far. Thank you for sharing. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's why I think people should be excited, because like you've touched so many different IPs and genres.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I found with a lot of designers specifically. So before I go into this, and we jump into like genre hopping and like branching out, for our audience who aren't privy to this information, could you describe, say, your role as lead designer on BioShock? Could you describe the responsibilities of a lead designer to our audience so they understand what kind of things you were focused on, and what you were responsible for there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the lead designer is usually the one in charge of keeping track of everything that all the game features related to the play of the game.
Mhm.
So what is the player actually doing? What are the buttons they're pressing? What are the encounters they're going to have? What are the monsters they're going to meet? What are the abilities they have? Like all of that kind of stuff is part of the design department. And the lead designer is usually driving a team to come up with all those ideas, help implement them, work with the engineers to make sure that they are coming to life in the way that the designers intend. And so the lead designer is helping manage all that and kind of being the point of contact from other departments for questions for design, as well as making any calls when the design isn't feeling right.
Yeah.
When things aren't quite turning out how we want, the lead designer is usually the person that's working with the creative director and the project manager to say, hey, we need to make these kinds of changes to the design, and that's going to lead to some new features we need or some things getting cut or whatever the case may be.
Did having that experience as a lead designer help with your transition into like bigger roles, like with Borderlands 2? Like, did that experience help at all?
Yeah, for sure. Design is a department that has to interact with all of the other departments, because
You dictate what they work on.
yeah, exactly. We're dictating what they work on, and it's like a good piece of a game design doesn't really work unless the art and the design and the technology are all working in harmony.
Unison.
Yeah, in harmony, and so I think of designers as usually the glue between those other two departments that are actually doing a lot more of the like what you see on screen often comes a lot more from like, well, I made the model of the weapon, as we're seeing from Borderlands footage here, or the character, and then the engineer's like, well, I made the gun actually fire, and those kinds of things. And the designer's like, here's how I wanted it to fire, here's how I wanted it to look, here's how these two things should work together. So I could kind of think of them as the glue. And so that works pretty well. Like for me, the transition from lead designer to creative director wasn't that huge because I was already interacting with all of those people on a day-to-day basis. I just had to kind of elevate what I was caring about up to another tier. I always like to, if you don't mind me going a little further, what's the difference between lead designer and creative director is something that I think a lot of fans don't really understand. Creative director is much closer to, in the film industry, the director role. So that helps people, but the difference between a lead designer and a creative director is usually the creative director is thinking about the game in a more holistic way than just worrying about design. They're even more involved in ensuring that the art is matching, but they're also worried about some of the commercial goals of the product and have to work well with the executive producers and publishers and things like that. They're the point of contact. They're the buck stops here kind of guy when it comes to every major decision in the title.
I'm sure you had some influence on art direction or how effects were created.
Yeah, the storyline and how are we bringing that story to life? How, like, this character, I remember talking with the art director on Borderlands about, like, I don't know, I'm going to pull someone out of thin air. Sir Hammerlock, like, we saw a lot of concepts and the art director would bring concepts and I was like, I really like this more safari vibe than more this, more of a military shapes or something like that might have been in some of those early concepts, and then those continue to evolve and we end up with the characters that appear on screen.
I have a question about that. I think it was Anthony Birch that wrote Borderlands 2, right? If I remember right. What's the interaction between creative direction and writing look like?
Yeah, we sat next to each other pretty much the whole project. There was, during the earlier phases of the game, we spent probably 2 weeks straight, just every day on the whiteboard, like working through the story together. And like outlining it, and like this is, we thought about Borderlands 2, we tried to design it like a season of television instead of like a movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we thought about every primary plot mission being an episode of television, in terms of trying to have each plot mission have a beginning, middle, and end of their own that is also adding to the higher level beginning, middle, end of the macro story.
Yeah.
I love hearing that,
and
because when
hooks.
I co-opted that game, I did feel like we always had a place to say, okay, tonight we're done playing. We did good. We'll meet
Right.
up,
You finish
another
that kind of episode.
Yeah.
And, there's a little hook at the end that's
Yeah.
leading into the next one, but we'll see what
That's
that adventure
smart.
is tomorrow, was kind of the vibe we wanted. So that's cool that you felt that for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a huge outline of like, this is what this one is and this one that one is, and all those kinds of things when we worked very closely for a long time. Yeah. So creative direction usually has a lot to do with story and narrative as well.
Mm.
Did you have the
Okay.
final call on something when you guys weren't sure where to take it and you had to choose a route? What happened then? Was that something for you, or was it for the game director? Or different?
Between me and Anthony,
Yeah,
for example? Yeah. If there was some, like, usually we kept work. If one of us wasn't happy, it probably wasn't right yet, and we would keep working on it. But if anything did come to, like, we just have to make a decision, then it was usually my final decision. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah.
How difficult is it to make that decision? Like, do you usually have a mindset when approaching it on like what is going to be best for the player, what is going to be best for like leading to future plot points and stuff like that? Like, let's say on the design of a boss encounter, like how do you approach those decisions? What are your priorities when you do that?
So as a creative director, when it comes to something like bosses, I generally go to the designer that is working on the boss. Like, bosses are a whole nother topic. I can spend a long time on, but I usually would go to the designer and say, this is the point of the boss. This is why this boss exists in the story. This is the parts of the story that this boss is creating the challenge that they need to overcome. This is why they need to defeat them. This is the result that's going to happen. So I want to feed that designer as much about the narrative that's why this boss exists, so that they can work into the design and the mechanics of how that boss fight works out to support that storyline. And then I try to get out of the way, because I'm not a great boss designer. I'm actually terrible at bosses. And so I'm happy when I have someone on my team who loves working on them and is excited about them and has that kind of frame of mind. So I usually just let them go do it. And I'm more just like, hey, can we add a little bit of this in here, because the story at this point needs to have more of a connection to this character. So can we have this type of attack focus on that character, or, like those kinds of things. I try to bring that higher level understanding to those moments that the person who's working on the very details of how a character is moving or fighting might not understand, that like that high level goal that they have to support as well.
Yeah, it makes sense that you have that ultimate kind of top down view of it all, but also from a design, you're working top down rather than bottom up. So you're like, this is the vision, this is why this thing exists, and you're kind of just corralling the other wonderful talented people on your team to make sure everything's moving in that direction. Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that a lot of people don't understand about game development is that there are so many factors that go into what actually appears on screen, and oftentimes it has nothing to do with what's the best experience or the perfect outcome. There's lots of things that are just like, we don't have enough time in the project to do all those bells and whistles that we want, or we don't actually, a person that was going to do that left the company, and now we don't have that resource, and we have to completely change what we wanted to do because we have a different skill set that is going to have to have to execute on that.
Or you have a thing and you're like, just do it and we'll fix it later. Okay, just do it, and you never do.
And that's what ships. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that happens.
There you go.
That happens all the time. Yeah. So I think it's I love doing podcasts like this to help educate people that probably the thing that you wish your favorite game did, they absolutely 100% wanted to do and couldn't for some reason, whether it was budget, time, expertise, whatever, or were told not to by people
above you,
levels above the people who are actually doing the work.
Yeah.
I know this is sounding like an interview right now, so I want to kind of break it up with some funny anecdotes. I just remembered the name of the artist that I knew on Borderlands, Scott Kester.
Oh,
I'm sure you interacted.
Awesome. Yeah,
I'm sure you
he's
interacted
a very
with
good friend of mine over at Ruckus Games. He started his new thing recently.
Oh, he did. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, he's got a studio called Ruckus, and they're working on some really cool stuff. And I've got his Pandora map right above me here in my office.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? It's easy to network when like your friends that you've worked with at a studio just kind of do their own thing
Branch
everywhere
off.
else. Yeah.
Spider web of dev
Small
friends.
world.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Anthony Birch used to bake goods when he worked at Santa Monica Studio.
Okay.
And he sent out an email saying that he had banana bread and said people can take whatever. So I went there and he's like, yeah, have as much as you want. And I took the whole thing. So I was really tired, okay? I was crunching and I took the whole damn thing and he let me do it. And that's when I knew, like, this guy's cool, you know? He's all right.
As much as you want includes all, right? Like you didn't do anything
I
wrong.
want all of it.
Did not specify, so
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit on the spectrum, so I took it literally. It's like, cool, thanks.
It was the truth. I only met Anthony Birch once. He wouldn't remember it, but it was at a talk at GDC, I'm pretty sure. He gave a talk on, I think it was Borderlands expansions and writing those. Can't remember exactly. And I think it was after that. We walked in, we were just in a little circle, and I talked to him about military game writing, because that's like what I was doing. But it was very brief. It was super brief. But yeah, he seemed cool. He came from Rocket Jump, I think, and I thought that his career progression was interesting because he was doing online shorts, if I remember right.
Hey Ash.
We moved to afterward.
I watched.
Yeah, and Hey Ash, what you playing? Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I think he went to Rocket Jump afterward. I can't remember, but I did watch Hey Ash, and she's in she's in Mythic Quest, isn't she? And other stuff too.
Yep, she's a writer. And
she did Tiny Tina.
Yeah, she was Tiny Tina.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's some early 2000s shit right there, man. Wow, Eric just pulled it up. Look at that.
There's Ash. Yeah, there's Hey Ash.
That's in the new. That must be a newer episode because that's because that looks like
a newer.
I don't know the
I mean,
context
they're
of
all
this one.
pretty. I mean, I don't want to say old.
I'm pretty sure this looks like Ash pretending to be Anthony, I think.
Oh, I see. Okay.
When you, Mikey, when you met him, did he have banana bread? Did you take all of it?
No, he didn't. We were in a circle, and somebody said something a little offensive, and I remember that he noted it, but then he continued to answer the question. That was the only sensitive moment. There was no banana bread pass. If there were, that might have been sensitive too, because he might have said, "Take as much as you want," and a hungry woman might have come over and taken all of it.
Well, to be honest, Tina, they probably stopped doing that because somebody took all of it.
I don't know.
Time.
If you still talk to him, but apologize on my behalf, please.
I
owe you.
And we know why now.
They think about it every day. They haven't. They haven't stopped thinking about the banana bread thief.
We'll timestamp it. Was there chocolate in it, Tina? What was in the banana bread?
I don't even remember at this point.
Banana.
I don't know. I just remember.
Eric just put a picture up. Yeah.
When I joined, I had to make a roadmap for gameplay engineering from scratch. Even though we were they were a year or two into the project at that point. And so I was working from 10 to, 12, 1, 2 a.m. And so I was kind of like out of it, but yeah. I mean, I'm sure you have stories too, Paul, of like crunching and stuff. I know the culture has shifted and we don't do that as much anymore.
But Paul worked in the 90s.
Do you have any? Yes.
Real.
Do you have any crazy stories that you're allowed
crunch.
to share or feel comfortable sharing?
I don't have anything like crazy. But I do remember some things from. So my Borderlands 2 story, I way overdid it on Borderlands 2. This is for any of you game developers or aspiring game developers. Don't do this. Basically, my Borderlands 2 crunch started for a reveal in Game Informer magazine, also something I have on my wall here. We were having our big Borderlands 2 reveal, and it was like, oh my god, they're coming in a month. We have to have something that looks awesome and is ready to go so that it's impressive and we have good screenshots and all that kind of stuff. So we started crunching for that. And then it was like, They did some shenanigans with release dates, and they moved the release date up. So like I basically went from that crunch right into shipping crunch, but then they moved the release date another 6 months. So I crunched for another 6 months after that.
Oh my god!
Oh, wow.
So it became a 12-month mega crunch. So I pictured I had my day job, which was creative director, and so I do that for like 8 hours. And then I would be just Joe designer for 8 hours.
Implementing stuff.
So much, yeah. So like the whole quest with the bird, Bloodwing. The Bloodwing gets huge and like you have to fight Bloodwing and like I did that whole mission. I made every single treasure chest in the entire game. Like all of those kinds of things. That was my night job. So
You're an animal, dude.
So I would be there super late, and I'm an ice cream junkie. So there was a Dairy Queen, like literally like a quarter mile.
Oh no! I know where this is going. Yeah.
From the office where Gearbox was, and so like it would be like, oh crap, Dairy Queen's closing in 10 minutes, and I'd run around to anyone else who was there, and I was like, who wants ice cream? And I would go grab ice creams for people and bring them back for people working late. So the things I remember more are the camaraderie moments that would happen from crunch. Another one that I remember, this was when we were crunching on General Knox DLC for Borderlands 1. My friend Jeremy Cook, like it was super late. He's like, sort of like slapped his chair and was like, I'll be back in 20. And we're like, okay, well, I don't know what that is. And he came back with like, I don't know, he had like 60 tacos from Taco Bell. Like he just went to Taco Bell.
Oh, he's my hero.
And like, came into the room because that was a super small team. There were only about 8 of us. We were all working really long hours. And he just came in and like dropped 60 tacos on the table in the middle of the room. And we had like this little Taco Bell party in the middle of it. So
I love that.
Those are the reasons that people say that have these fond memories of crunch. It's not because of the extra hours. It's because of moments like that.
Stories
that bonded them with the team in a way that doesn't happen during the 9 to 5 part of the day.
Yes,
I think not to say that I want people working long hours in order to get those, but
I totally understand.
Those are the bright spots in the potentially dismal, long hours.
I think my therapist called it trauma bonding.
Yeah, that's probably correct. That's really what it is. None of us are excited that we're here, but we're excited about the product we're making. We're excited about each other's work, and these moments like those, are things that I definitely remember from those.
Oh man, I remember running to In-N-Out because we had an In-N-Out near our office when I worked on Call of Duty, and they closed at 2 a.m. So we would
it's a
try to
burger
remember.
Place, by the way, for people who don't know Southern California.
An amazing burger
Heads up,
place.
it's a burger place that's a little overrated in my opinion. But
I'm with you. It's an overrated burger
It's
place.
the only thing
Paul,
open at like 1:30 in the morning.
It's these Southern Californians, Paul. They don't get it.
I need to be the
continue.
mediator,
Sorry.
guys. I haven't had it.
I don't have this level of loyalty, but for Texans, it's Whataburger. If you're a Texan,
Yeah.
Whataburger is the best, and they're all the same. They're all kind of crappy little burgers, but
Yeah, so we had burgers. I don't know in Texas if like crunch meals were. I'm gonna assume it's barbecue. The barbecue ribs.
A lot of Tex-Mex barbecue, yeah, stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
The worst for me, Paul. So my coworker had a perfectly placed sandwich on top of his garbage can inside. Okay, don't fucking judge me, Jay. I walked up to it at like 11:30 at night, and I forgot to eat dinner. So don't judge me. And I looked at it, and I looked at everyone else, and I just reached in and I grabbed it. I opened the wrapper and I started eating it, and everyone kind of looked at me and didn't judge me and just kept working. And it was like maybe to my lowest point in game time.
You're like a food goblin.
Like wrapped up what was left and put it in the trash, and you unwrapped it.
Yeah, like in Seinfeld, you know, when George Costanza looks in the garbage and he sees like something there that's like, it's fine, it's not touching anything, it's sanitary, but I'm gonna reach into the garbage and eat it.
Tina, you ate garbage?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good.
And
it was good garbage.
Banana bread, which is worse. I'm not sure. No, I get this. I'm indie, right? So it's kind of crunch all the time because I'm one of the only people working on my core project.
Yeah.
But like it's passion, right? Like you have such a desire to get the game to where you want it to be. Like the other day, I couldn't sleep, and I was just like tossing and turning in bed. It was like laying in bed for like 3 hours. It got to about 4 in the morning, and I was just like, I'm not going to waste my time here. And I just got up and started implementing new features into my game, and then finished a feature, and then my brain was like, you can sleep now. And then I got tired, and I could just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Like this, you should try and sleep. But like you have this just passion that you need to bring out because you want the game to be the best it can be, you know?
Yeah.
And what was it like for you, Paul? Like, what drove you to the project you're working on now? And
Wartorn.
What made you want to make that game?
Yeah, this is also a really great question. So part of it for me, you know, when I went through my history there, SWAT 4, FPS, Borderlands, FPS, BioShock, FPS. And when we founded the studio and we're pitching things around, people only wanted to hear about FPS ideas from me, and that was really sad. Like, I was like, I am more than FPS. I like design is not a one genre thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I want to explore. I want to grow and get better. I don't want to just keep making the same things over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But ultimately, Wartorn was one of the very first ideas when Chauvin and I, got our first handful of folks. We got in. We didn't have an office or anything like that. We just met at one of our coworkers' houses and, hey, what kind of games do we want to make? And everyone's throwing out lists and like, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do that. And one of the ones that I threw out was what has over many years evolved into Wartorn, but it was this idea of a smaller scale, tactical, real-time strategy game inspired by Myth: The Fallen Lords. Which was a Bungie game from the 90s. Remember when Bungie made not FPS? Though they did.
Yeah.
Back when they made a fantasy RTS. So I'm going the opposite direction. I started the FPS and I'm going to the fantasy RTS, and they started at with fantasy RTS.
There you go.
Oh my god, it's rhyming.
There you go.
But so yeah, that was the original idea. It originally was like had some different game design ideas. It was a little more head-to-head multiplayer, and we explored that version of the game for a while, and then the studio needed to make some money, so we did some co-dev and kind of put it on the back burner, and then we've come back to it here in the last year and a half, and it's evolved into this single player, more narrative driven roguelite experience.
So you said co-dev. For our listeners that don't know what that is, can you explain that?
Oh, sure. That is short for co-development, and all of the mega hit, huge monster games that you play are not made by one studio. They are driven by one studio, but they usually go outsourced to lots of smaller studios to help with different parts of the game, and that's called co-development. So we've done some work with Epic. We've done some work with Volition, single tier.
Oh man, I miss that engine.
and Gearbox. I have a lot of connections over there, of course. So we've done some work for them as well. And that helps pay the bills and has allowed us to build a nest egg enough that we could make Wartorn as an fully independent game.
Right on. How big is your studio, Stray Kite?
So I'm gonna say a number, and it's gonna be close, but not quite. It's around 27, I think.
Oh, not bad. Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. Yep. And that covers all departments. We have a handful of designers, a handful of engineers, a handful of artists, and we use a bunch of really awesome contractors for some of the writing and things like that.
That's awesome.
Have you leaned into former colleagues to build this team?
Yeah, absolutely. Bunch of former robot people that we've been able to sort of get some of that band back together. Our lead engineer is from Robot. My art director and co-owner is from Robot. Chauvin, of course, I met at Robot as well. I grabbed our lead artist is an animator who I worked with at Gearbox. Kyle Stevenson, our marketing director, was also over at Gearbox for a while. So yeah, definitely, trying to find people who are looking for something a little smaller and a little more scrappy and excited about those opportunities after being in AAA. And they're of course super talented. And we have a lot of we also are really fortunate here in Dallas that the SMU Guildhall is right here in Dallas, which is one of the premier master's programs for game design and engineering and stuff. Yeah, so we've found a lot of really awesome talent from the Guildhall as well too.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you can recruit from there because it's nearby. I know that a lot of AAA devs felt burned out around the COVID lockdown period. And a lot of AAA devs started their own studios. I imagine yours was probably around the same time.
We were a little bit before. We started in 2018.
Okay.
And our first work was with Epic. And so we got used to working remote by doing that co-dev work with Epic.
Mm-hmm.
So when, everyone else went off to remote and Zoom and all these kinds of things, we were kind of like, this is just what we've
You're already doing it.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a couple of years already. So it wasn't as terrifying for us.
For any developers listening, is Stray Kite still a remote studio?
So we do have an office space here in the Dallas area. And about 15 to 20 of our 27 are in the area. And come into the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday are kind of optional. If people want to come in, they can. If they'd rather work at home, that's also fine. And then we have some folks scattered around the country. We have one in Oklahoma, one in Kansas, one in Wisconsin, one in Kentucky, so a few remote people scattered around as well.
It's crazy. I have an art question that might get a little bit inside baseball for the listeners, but I'm your art style in Wartorn is stunning. I really, really like it. Namely because I'm doing it in my personal project. I'm doing a similar kind of hand painted watercolory kind of aesthetic. So when I jumped into your game, I was like, damn. This is what I'm aiming for. This is exactly what it is. Is that a purely hand-painted thing, or is it a mixture of hand-painted and a post-processing effect using a Kurihara process?
It is primarily a post-process, actually.
Awesome, because I'm doing the same thing, and I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track.
So pros and cons, again, a little inside baseball here, but pros and cons. The pro is you don't need to author your assets in a particular way. The post process will kind of do the work for you.
Yeah.
But the post process kind of takes over everything.
Yes.
And so if we've had to stencil out our characters because you couldn't see them when we put the post process. So they have like a smidge of the post process, and the rest of the world has a much higher percentage of our painterly post process. Yeah.
Awesome. This is really nice to hear because I'm not a technical artist. My primary areas are design and sound. They're like my core areas, but in indie you need to do everything, and I've been trying to work on this post-processing effect. For us, I'm going to post it in the in our little chat. I'm doing the exact same thing, and I am also stenciling out my main characters and tweaking it, because when you apply it to higher detail models, it gets messy and like weird, and you can't really see it. So hearing you say the exact same things I'm going through has just like given me such a boost. So thank you.
Yeah, and
You can achieve. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, we've been getting a lot of feedback from fans, who've gotten a chance to play during Next Fest about the art style, and we're right in that spot where you're at, where it's like people are loving what they see. It's really cool. It's special. It stands out. But I wish I could see this a little better, and I wish I could see that a little better. So that's immediate feedback that we're taking and are thinking about and working on and trying to figure out how we can not lose the specialness we have, but also make the game read a little more crisp and for people. So it's really exciting for us. I'm used to AAA where like no one sees the game at all except for maybe press, and then it comes out and you're stuck with whatever the feedback was, and maybe you do a patch or two. Whereas this is my first time having this kind of early access and Next Fest and all that kind of stuff, and really being able to respond and react to fans as it's happening, and helping us identify what people really care about and what we should spend more of our time on, and what maybe is good enough how it currently is. And so it's interesting you bring it up, because we love our art style. We think it's really dramatic and really special, but we also want to tweak as much as we can so that people can see these really cool characters we created and understand the mechanics that are happening without losing that art style.
And as you said, like that's really hard or tedious to tweak when you're using a post-process effect. So for anyone in the chat who doesn't know what a post-processing effect is, it's effectively in a way, a filter you place over the entire scene on the viewport of the scene of what the player is seeing. So you're not altering the textures or the models themselves, you're altering the viewport of what the player is seeing. So because of that, tweaking things is really difficult, because you can't individually tweak models and stuff like that, or you can. It's just tedious. So
the
blessing and a curse.
Process is sort of the back years ago. There was all this like per pixel shading. Oh my god, that was a new thing for video cards. Post processes are exactly that. They're taking the entire screen and manipulating every single pixel on the screen to achieve the look that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, because of that, they're expensive. They are very expensive. So if you don't have them optimized very well, they can tank your performance of the game. Right. So it's hard to tweak that. So mechanically, in your game, what do you feel is the driving force that's going to keep players like hooked and engaged? And like, I've only played the demo, but like on the grand scale, how do you see like progression and like story and stuff like that?
Yeah, so what people are playing right now is kind of hand waving all of that. That's the part of the game that still has the most work before we're ready for early access. But I can talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve. So another Wayback Machine game that some of you may remember, Oregon Trail. Does anyone remember Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we're millennials, Paul. Like we played. We got a good heaping of Oregon Trail.
Played it in school and all that kind of stuff. But so we like to call this. We think of this as a fantasy Oregon Trail. Is kind of what the meta, the overworld part of the game is. You're kind of doing this fantasy world, Oregon Trail, and then when you have a conflict, you actually go into the 3D and have your tactical battle to like resolve the conflicts that appear during the course of your journey. But you might have like our wagon got stuck in the mud, or we caught a disease, or the dragon came by and ate some of our refugees, and there's going to be all these kind of narrative moments that are happening along your journey that are manipulating and modifying the resources that you need to maintain in order to successfully travel your what we call the caravan. Very much like Oregon Trail, you got sort of the wagon and all that kind of stuff, and all the people and that are hanging around with you. And the story is you're trying to journey and get justice for your home being burned, and of course things are happening along the way. And ultimately, you're trying to find somewhere in the war-torn lands of Talor that is safe. And so another touch point we talk about in pop culture is how in the Two Towers of Lord of the Rings, the people of Rohan leave their home and go to their fortress of Helm's Deep. We'll be safe over there from all this crap that's happening. And of course, they may or may not be safe when they actually get there. That'll be part of our story, right? But yeah, that's it. That's kind of the journey, and there'll be all these kind of classic indie style little narrative pop-ups that you read, and you make a decision, and that affects the outcomes of those moments, and what kinds of resources you might gain or lose depending on the choices that you make. That's kind of the mechanical part of the overworld portion of the game. And like I said, there'll be you'll just randomly get attacked on the road, and then you have to go do these fights. And so back to your why is this going to be sticky. Well, one, we hope that those battles are just fun, and they're fun to play. And we're going to have lots of different randomization of the types of enemies that you're playing. And the caravan that you're creating will also change how those kind of play out, and what capabilities and what strategies you have to use. There's a little bit of that in the demo, that if you've played it a couple of times, there are certain
variations
of units that work very well in some of the maps and don't work as well in some of the others, and so you're trying to find a good balance. During the course of the game, when a battle starts, you'll be able to pick which ones you want to bring into battle, so that you can be like, oh, it's a defense mission. I don't want those guys; they're terrible at defending. Let me kind of fine tune for the objective that's happening. And so again, stickiness, finding the great build is one of the things that I talk about a lot. Like that, I think a lot of these games have this fun sort of some of them are actual deck building, some of them are deck building, but in a sort of different kind of way, where you're like, I've got these awesome combos and they're just devastating people, and it was awesome, and oh no, something happened and it went south. But the next game, you're like searching to get back to that perfect build that you were so close to having, that's something that we want to be a part of this game, that every time you fail and start over again, you are learning about what combination of units and we're working well together, how you managed things. Was that adding to your capabilities? Was it detracting? And so what I love about roguelike games and why we wanted to have these is I love that it's not only a power growth that's a part of the game, but also there's a player growth of me learning the game and succeeding and trying things and having them not work out is also a level up, right? So you're leveling up yourself as a player, as well as leveling up your abilities or your squads or whatever the case may be. So those are the things that I think will help keep people engaged and wanting to do that, just one more run kind of mentality.
100%, yeah. There's also this kind of, with the roguelite formula, is having the juxtaposition between failure and extreme success. I found the perfect build and everything's going great. You have to have the juxtaposition of the last few runs have been kind of shoddy for whatever reason, be it their own player skill or not meeting the right characters or something's happened, to make that success feel earn, even if you've just kind of handed it to the player through like, you have this troll that's kind of powerful in the demo, and
I like him.
Yeah, he's great.
I like when he hits the ground and everybody flies up, and I go, "Wow, it's just like."
Including I learned that lesson real hard. I ended the match because I knocked my main dudes away, and then they just got like peppered.
And not to interrupt you, Jay, but in true roguelite fashion, I go to the next map and I'm like, "Where's my replenish button to replenish the 3 guys?" Oh, it's not there. They're all dead.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's it. But go on. Sorry.
That's what I love about them as well. Like, this is something I've wanted to do in games for a long time, and I love that this genre has started to gain momentum, which is providing real consequences in games. And that's what these roguelite and roguelike games do, is like, your decisions matter. Like, we love to talk about, oh, my decisions matter. And we often talk, that becomes down to like, how many endings are there to the game? And that's what your decisions matter often translates to.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in these kinds of games, your decisions matter because when you sent those elves into a situation that they weren't capable of, they got wiped out and they're gone. Now there are consequences for you, making a poor tactical choice. And in our Wartorn storyline, we want that to also impact our heroes, that those losses hurt them, and that's why we have this notion of the primary resource in the game is hope. And every time you lose units, you lose hope. And as other tragic things happen along the road, that will affect your hope. And whenever happy things happen, you gain a little bit of that back. And so, to me, this is where real decisions matter, consequences can come into play, is when they can be mechanical and not just about, some plot point happening slightly different hours from now. So that's one of the reasons I love these kinds of games.
I agree with you, Paul, but I also have to say I can't help but smirk that you poo-pooing the multiple endings as the lead designer on BioShock. One of the games that championed that or popularized it, I guess. But I agree with you completely. It's about mechanical, systemic gameplay consequences, not what are the 3 things the writer wanted me to take away and what did I stumble into or deliberately choose my way into. It's very different from actual consequences. I agree.
And even that, I think you'll see this, there's been some buzz around Judas coming soon, which is, Ken Levine's next game, who was the creative director on BioShock. He didn't love that was the best we could do with those decisions. And I think that's why he's spent so much of his career post BioShock working towards making a narrative game where the decisions have so much more impact. We'll see when we get a chance to play it. I'm looking forward to it, but that is something that I care about a lot. Why I'm exploring this kind of genre in Wartorn, and then some of the other projects that we're working on are also really about how can we make the player's choices matter in a more intimate, moment-to-moment kind of way, even in a narrative game, instead of just being about different endings.
You barely touched on a topic that I think we could is like really something we can discuss for ages with wine or something, like in person. You said that you were pigeonholed as a shooter dev, right? And you wanted to break out of that. And I've experienced that too. I'm not a designer, I'm a producer. But a lot of times, a lot of recruiters would say, hey, here's a shooter opportunity. Here's like a first-person shooter. Here's a third-person shooter we want you to work on. And the only time I broke out of that was for Santa Monica Studio with God of War, doing an action-adventure game. But the pivot was, hey, I like action. There's action moments in my games. I want to work on like boss battles and figure out how you guys make that cool, right? And it was kind of an easier sell. But it's I don't know if Mike or Jay, you've had this issue. Maybe not so much in indie because you can just do whatever you want. But
no.
Just being restricted to like, here's your box, and this is what we expect of you.
It does happen. It's happened to me. I've been lucky enough doing contracting and stuff. Like it's not the only thing I do, because there's a higher volume, and I've been able to find stuff that I still have something to contribute to in my skill set or something I know how to do. A big thing for me was moving into VR, like working for Meta after being on Insurgency and Day of Infamy and Black Mesa, and now obviously as a military shooter, but like in VR, like that was a huge challenge. For me, I really like shooters. I think I would be comfortable and happy if that's all I did, but I don't only do that, and I think that's important, obviously, as a designer, that you need to branch out into other things. And I think it's really cool, Paul, that you took a big risk, man. You're taking a big risk, jumping into a new genre. That's cool. That's admirable. RTT, the genre, is different from FPS in so many ways, but with your background, you can make it more interesting because you don't come from just one place.
You can
I don't know. What about you, Jay?
Other genres.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there. I had this kind of vulnerable conversation with a really good friend of mine. He's a designer on Sea of Thieves at Rare. I studied game dev with him at uni. Really good friend of mine, and my background is I've mainly worked in the education space. I taught game dev at university, and I have this show that I teach game dev in a variety of different episodes on lots of different genres and lots of different aspects of game dev. And I was talking to him about being self-conscious that I haven't shipped a game yet, that I've spent so much time in the education space that I felt self-conscious that I hadn't done that from a designer's perspective, because we are having this intense design conversation about lots of different things, and I told him about my self-consciousness about it, and he was like, think of it this way, you have spent the last 5 years every week thinking about completely different problems in game devs on how certain things succeeded, certain things failed in hundreds of different games and hundreds of different genres and stuff like that. And he was like, that is making you a better designer than just working on the same project for 5 years, because you're only looking at one thing and you're only thinking about those problems. And he was like, you're in a unique space where you're getting to experience all of these different things. And that's one of my favorite things about indie, is that not only can we just pick what we want to work on and just do it, because you're the one responsible for having to do it, but also we can touch on so many different things, and we are very fortunate we aren't getting pigeonholed into one thing. And I'm sure that's a huge issue. Like some games might not get funding from teams because it is a complete genre shift to what they're known for. And I think that's crazy, right? As you were saying, Paul, the pedigree you have is not tied intrinsically to FPS. It's your skill in amplifying those games in that genre, and that can apply to any genre. And I think that's what a lot of publishers and a lot of like devs in the higher ups think, well, if you've made a lot of FPS, well, that's all you can do. And it's like, no, I can do anything, right? They say that having a degree is just proving that you can commit to something for 3 years, right? It's not proving you can do a thing.
To play the worst devil's advocate, though, because I hate doing devil's advocate, but when a publisher is throwing money at a studio to do a project, if they're not self-funded, it's less of a risk to throw money at a team that's known for a genre, right? Like if the Borderlands crew wanted to make another scrappy space version of it or something, I'm sure a publisher would be like, how much do you want? Like, we'll jump as high as you need.
The way that
a romance RPG or something, right?
The way that I think you got to think of it is, it's a business, but no, don't just think of it as it's a business for those people. Think of it as like when you work with that much money, millions of dollars, you can only go by risk, right? Like obviously, if you only go by risk, then you could be screwing yourself up. You don't take risks that could lead to the bigger return or whatever. But you have to largely go by risk, and it makes sense to only go by risk because there's so much at stake. And where are you going to put your money? Somewhere to a person who has done this before, or someone who's done it before in a very different way, right? Like you have to kind of empathize with the person who's holding that bag, and where they got to put it somewhere where they lose as little as possible. That's the unfortunate reality, and that's why it's all the more special when someone who does have the cool pedigree and they get funding where they say, yeah, you're trying to do something a little different and take it from a different angle. Go for it. Let's see what happens. So that's what's special about Wartorn, I think. Especially that you were inspired by a game from the 90s. I love that you dropped that too.
I think to add a little bit more to that, because I've been dealing with what you're talking about for the last, I don't know how long, 27 years.
Yeah.
Has been this dance, of exactly what you're talking about. And the oh crud, I've lost it.
Well,
talk about inspiration.
I promise you.
It'll come back.
I did want to share. So you Stray Kite, from my understanding from our conversation so far, raised your own funding for this game by co-deving.
Yeah, we made some margins on the co-dev that we did, and built a nest egg, and then as we all know, the industry's had some troubles and funding was dried up in lots of ways. We're like, well, let's use that nest egg and finally do what we set out to do in the first place, which is make our own stuff, right? So we're investing in ourselves is what we're doing at this point, right?
Yeah. So cool.
I mean, all that said, I do wish that publishers were better equipped to somehow measure someone that's curious and very passionate about what they want to make.
You got me back to it.
There you go.
So what I think a lot of these decision makers don't understand is that the games that turned out great, that are now we want you to just do that again.
Yeah, that's staple.
Only turned out great because they were exciting and different and inspiring at the moment we made them. So like Borderlands was really different and really special and unique, and we were all super excited about how different it was, and we poured our hearts into it. And then Borderlands 2 was like, man, we could do so much better. And so we poured ourselves back into that again because we knew there was another big jump that genre and that style could have, and we knew exactly what we wanted to do with it. For me personally, after that, I was kind of like, I did that. I poured everything I had into that. I'm very happy with how it turned out. What's next?
Yeah.
And so that's why I explored. I went to another studio, and now here I am, still searching for that. It has to be something that's engaging me in a new kind of way, and is exciting. And that's when the whole team does their best, when they're all in that same moment of this is really different. This is really cool. I'm really excited about what we're making. That's when special stuff happens. It's not do what you did again. You are never going to get as good a game when you tell the same team to just do that again. And I think that's where that risk aversion comes back to bite these monster AAA games that are coming from great studios. And we're seeing a lot of them fall flat, and I'm sure some of it is the people there are tired of doing that and need that next thing that reignites the fire.
I do wonder, Paul, there are some exceptions in our industry, like Grand Theft Auto, right? Mm-hmm. How and what, how, and the amount of time it takes to make that sucker. Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and somehow they know when they decide to ship, it's going to be gold and just destroy the rest of the industry. And they don't have to participate in E3s or the GDCs or any of the, they play by no rule. I don't know how they did this.
When did that start? Was it free San Andreas? Because they did transition into that.
It was.
No, when did GTA become? Because it was always really, really popular.
Well,
three was a cultural
lived through
phenomenon.
the 90s, and
yeah. GTA.
You tell us.
Remembers GTA 2, the top-down 2D, GTA game. It was 3 that really put it on the map, and was so different than anything else that was happening at that time in the industry that it just blew everyone away. Developers, players, everyone was just like, "What? Yeah, there's GTA 2."
Thank you, Eric.
That doesn't seem like GTA, but from 3 to where we are now is an evolution, but for the most part,
Insane.
it's 3 sort of set the bar, and now they're like continuing to just do outrageous scale and whatnot in that franchise.
I want to bring something up. Are we at the biggest gap of a GTA game that we've ever been? Because GTA 5 came out, 2013? Over a decade ago, I think.
Yeah.
Must
Right?
be at this point. That's a good point.
Right? So it makes me wonder, oh man, how's it going to go?
I can't even.
There must be so much pressure. I think, make no mistake, I think it's going to be good, but it's been a while, dude.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And I'm with you, Tina. I can't comprehend these games. Like, I worked on big titles, but these just are a whole different realm.
You know what, like, really pisses me off about this, too, is that because of the dev cycle, over 10 years, right, for this one game, you're going to have so much churn in the people that come and go. The credits, are they going to do the credits properly? Like, are the people that laid the foundation for this fucking game, spent 5-6 years grinding to make sure that it's like, all the features and the tools and everything's good for this team, like, are they going to be in the credits?
What do you reckon the turnover is like at Rockstar? Like, I don't know. Because I don't really hear a lot of drama or like layoffs or anything happening at Rockstar.
Well, that's the thing. They don't participate in game industry events, so it's like so rare that you meet anybody.
It's like a utopia, I reckon, or it's hell, and they've got horrible NDAs where they can't say anything or they'll kill your family.
I know one person there, and I need to talk to them about it. And then I met a person there. This is like 2014, Steam Dev Days, years ago. I think she was there at the time. Shit, maybe I'll reach out to her. We could get her on, see if we can pick her brain or something.
I doubt, I bet they have such an intense lock and key on their developers.
No, I'm sure. Unless they went there, and then they left. Because that could be, What's a cryptid? Yeah.
Cryptid's like a mythological creature that, the Mothman is a cryptid.
Yeah,
I haven't played enough Wartorn. I probably would have seen one.
Like Mikey's like, oh, I met a Rockstar dev. I know. I saw one.
We should start a conspiracy theory about GTA. All the aliens that people talk about that are already on this planet, they're working on GTA.
They're all working on GTA. Yeah.
That Bigfoot picture of going like this, but it's a GTA designer.
Yeah, Paul just did that.
I want to talk about GTA Online.
Holding his NDA in his hand.
Holding his NDA in the forest. All hairy.
It's crazy. God. Like pressure. That's the main thing. Like I was talking to Jess about this, of just like indie perspective. Think of games like Stardew Valley, Terraria, some of the biggest games, like sales wise, ever nowadays. Small indie projects worked on a handful of people, haven't released sequels because. What unbelievable pressure the Terraria team must be under to release their next project.
How do you make more content than Terraria for a sequel? Like, you can't have a sequel, or it's very difficult to have a sequel with less content. We see that time and time again. I think Payday 3 really struggled with that recently. Go ahead. Chocolatier.
That's a whole problem, in my opinion. Like, who made this rule? Who made this rule that the sequel has to be like twice as big as the previous one? Why can't it be twice as good?
Yeah.
That's true. You could just innovate and say like, okay, well, we took our formula and we turned it on its head, but we kept the vision and the pillars that you know from the original. That's fair. But I do think there's a player expectation portion to it too, though. Like when you, as we all well know, when you go into doing something like that, you look back and you say, all right, people still want the game for what it was. It is a sequel after all. How do we innovate and keep that? It's so nebulous. SWAT 4 did a good job at it. SWAT 3, now I'm going to gush to you about SWAT 4. I'm sorry, Paul. I'm sorry, everybody. Big tactical shooter fan, loved SWAT 4. The move from SWAT 3 to 4, a big part was graphical, seeing first person weapons and stuff. But the emphasis on, I guess what we would call environmental storytelling and level design, and that Fairfax mission, man. Having that in 4 was excellent, and you had a little bit of the vibe in 3. Like you had the music, it was freaky, it was the voiceover supported it all. But 4, iterated on all that and made it better. And I mean, for all I know, I had fewer maps than 3. So you can have less content. That was a good example of innovating in the right way and not losing the soul, in my opinion, and adding new mechanics and stuff.
That was just Irrational Games. Like all the environmental story stuff, that was just who we were. We couldn't make that game and not do that, because that's what Irrational was that environmental storytelling, which of course you saw again in BioShock and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, and that all came from their heritage of System Shock 2. That was their first game, right? And so we were like, the SWAT story is kind of interesting. We were between games. Like, we have been working on a game for a long time on PlayStation 2 called The Lost, and our publisher went out of business. So what happens to our game now that
That'll do it.
out of business? And then the publisher felt that they owned it, and we felt we owned it, and there became this whole legal thing. And then so we had to stop working on it while legal crap was happening. And so what are we going to do now? And Ken went out and found that Sierra, another thing that doesn't exist
Powerhouse back then,
anymore, wanted to do the next SWAT game. And we weren't really tactical shooter people. You know, we were these like edgy storytelling, you know, horror edge, you know, that was our thing, right? And but it was like, we got to pay the bills. We got to, you know, it's better than just sitting here doing nothing and going out of business. So let's make SWAT. And so we dove in and got excited about it. But we were irrational, so we couldn't just make a level that was like, there's some bad guys in the level. We had to have it be some crazy serial killer or some, you know, complete nut job who has this weird, you know, that whole cult level was
dude.
Yeah.
The one of my favorites, one of my low-key SWAT 4 favorites is the disaster scenario of the terrorists that attack a convoy, and one of the guys in the convoy gets sent to the hospital. So they raid the hospital, and you bust in the front door, and you're the SWAT team, and they're all boarded up. And you're like, what the fuck? And you look up at the TV at the reception desk of the hospital, and the news reporter's like, the SWAT team's about to go in this door behind me. And one of the officers gets on the line and says, the news gave away our entry. Tell them to stop, please. It was awesome. There's so much little bits of, I guess you're right. That's just Irrational's style. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
DNA.
poured all that in, and then it felt like a different game for fans, right? Because it just had a layer of depth in that moment to moment that the previous games were like, we're just a cop doing cop things. Whereas we were like, we're going to put all that, every cop show thing that you've ever seen a SWAT team do, we're doing. Like,
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Have you played Ready or Not? I got to ask.
I haven't got to it yet.
They're hugely inspired by you if you play it. You're going to see. Not just in the gunplay and shit, which is fine. You know, tactical shooters, we figured out our core loop in tactical shooters. But the environmental stuff, the vibe, it's thick, man. You'll see when you play it.
It's that thick vibe.
I need to ask before our conversation ends. When you went from Borderlands 1 to 2 and changing the playable characters, what drove that decision?
It kind of comes back to the like, next game has to be bigger. To be honest, we felt that how much more was there really for us to explore in those characters' skill trees? And it wasn't going to be enough to, like, you know, inspire, you know,
merit a sequel.
Yeah, to inspire our fans as well as, you know, get other new players excited about it. So we decided, well, let's dive in and do new heroes. Yeah. And then what that opened, but then people were like, but I loved Roland. What happened to Roland? You know, like, this was the internal discussion, right?
Felt that way too.
Yeah. Like, mocking voice was for your team.
Throw these characters away. People like spent hours playing them. We can't just have them disappear. And so that's, you know, when we got Anthony on board, I talked a lot about Terminator 2. That we need Borderlands 1 to Borderlands 2 being from this, like a jump like Terminator to Terminator 2, that you're like, oh, it's Sarah and she survived. And then in Terminator 2, you're like, whoa, what happened to Sarah? right? You know, like what?
Poor Sarah.
So,
That's
so that
true.
was our like guiding light for the main characters of the first game, is that they're going to be there and they're now going to be a part of the plot, and we're doing way more story than the first game had. The first game story was very thin. So now we can actually tell some stories about them and have them be more of a character than just a cipher and all that kind of stuff. And we need to put each and every one of them in a place that the player is not expecting. So that's why, you know, like Mordecai is a drunk up on a mountain hiding in the corner, and Brick is a bandit now, and like, you know, like we wanted to have players that when they get the band back together, that they feel like they're having this exciting, like, what are they up to? Oh no, whoa, what happened to Mordecai? And you know, like all those kinds of things, right?
The point about Sarah Connor, I'm still on that, is very good, because nobody just walks away from Terminator 1 like, oh, that was weird. That robot from the future tried to kill me. I got work tomorrow, and they just go to bed and they wake up and they go back to their life, right? It's telling of how much Borderlands, cares about its characters, that you wanted to carry through the trauma and represent the seriousness, or just the things that a person does throughout their life and how they change. And I think that's part of why the sequel resonated so well with people.
Yeah, no, it definitely forced me to play a different character or hero, like you said. I played Lilith in the first one. She was so OP. So I made sure she had every elemental damage possible through her gun and grenade and her abilities. And so I got to the point where I would piss off my my friends, because like all the enemies would T-pose because there's just so much shit going on the screen.
That's amazing.
And they were like, Tina, fucking stop. And I'm like, no, this is awesome. I loved her. She was funny.
Yeah, and that's why she's the most OP in terms of the story in the next game, where she's teleporting the whole
it was
away and doing great stuff.
I had that exact same experience, Tina, in Diablo 4 when it came out. Like whenever I play games that have summons, like if I can summon a horde of skeletons or bees, I'm there, right?
So
like
you're
I
the
love
necromancer?
just not playing the game and just letting that's that juxtaposition gratification. You struggle, and then suddenly you have an army and you don't need to do anything, and the act of not doing anything is the reward, right? Anyway, there was
He summons so much he doesn't play any games.
Yeah.
He lets the
summon
game
people
play
to do it for me.
You liking RTS, right? Like
exactly, right?
Yeah, and roguelikes.
Yeah. So like what I did was it was this build where to summon things would have to die, and then I used the corpse of that thing to summon a thing, right?
As it goes.
But in the act of summoning, it would explode the corpse. But by exploding the corpse, it would kill everything around it. So I would just spam this button, and it would leave this pool of black sludge on the ground, and everything in the vicinity would die, which means nobody I was playing with could see the floor, which is very important in Diablo. So I would just walk into a room and just go, and then the entire room would turn black and nobody would be able to see. And they'd just be like, Jay, we just don't want to play with you. And I'd be like,
That's the kind of stuff I'm all about.
Bad with power. Dark magic.
So trolling.
I felt like a dark wizard, necromancer, if you will.
Well, Jay, you'll be happy to know that they aren't in our demo, but there are some summoning characters coming in Wartorn in the future. So.
Oh my God, Paul!
There you go.
I'm so down.
Actually, I'm sorry, Paul. You reminded me of a
go.
question. Didn't somebody ask a question earlier from the chat about Wartorn? Eric, I think you linked it. Hold on, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, I can find it.
Question to the devs: are there going to be Beastmasters, or if monsters are single units, are there any Hellhounds, War Dog Mastiffs, etc.?
We are not exploring the beast side of Wartorn yet. Right now, our game is primarily focused on introducing all of our different races, from trolls and goblins and elves and stigs and etc. etc. But that is definitely on my roadmap. I want to have the army of giant spiders and stuff like that someday.
Okay, then.
You have a great framework for it, right? Every giant spider will feel so valuable because of the roguelite design. You could lose it at any moment.
I know it's expensive to add, but if you could add a toggle that says, people that are terrified of spiders. Here, click this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have to see them. Yeah, turn them into something else.
The arachnophobia filter. Okay, I'll put that on the list.
What would it turn into, Tina? What would be more acceptable for you?
What can you turn a spider into? I don't know. An octopus? I don't know.
The terrestrial octopus. Got it.
Yeah, there you go.
In World of Warcraft, it was
flops around.
in
Instead
World
of
of Warcraft.
6 legs, it's like 8. Yeah, it's
Yeah, what did
making
WoW do?
tentacles.
WoW did crabs, so they transformed the spiders into like crab lobster people.
Yeah.
Because that's the adjacent model they had basically.
Mhm.
I know Monster Hunter, which came out today, has one. I haven't
they
used
do?
it because I'm not scared of spiders, but like there are giant spider bosses in that game. I've already fought one, so I'm sure they do something. Does somebody in chat know what Monster Hunter does? Does they make them pool noodles or something?
So
While they answer that, I'll tell you a fun one that I liked. House Flipper. Pretty sure it was House Flipper, which is a game. It's like you flip houses. You go into a house, you clean it up, and you resell it. They turned like cockroaches and stuff into like dirt, I think it was. So instead of cockroaches running around, it was because it doesn't have to move or attack you or have behavior.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Maybe
Just
I'm wrong.
dirt mounds just walking around.
It's just it's either dirt or just like I'll figure it out. Hold on.
Where-
none
you
of
saying,
this is
Paul?
the
I'm saying,
Irrational
doesn't sound-
Games heritage. How I was trained was suck it up. There's bees coming out of your arms. Like
Suck it up.
you can't
Yeah, the
turn
trypophobia, the horrible trypophobia nature of the bees. Oh
You
my
can't turn
god.
the bees off. You just have to deal with it because
Deal with it.
that's what we want
BioShock.
to do to our players.
I mean, that's the badass
BioShock,
way
you
to
can't
do
turn
it.
the bees off is the best slogan.
It's frightening. It remains frightening as the game
Oh
wants
yeah, I
to
mean,
be by the world.
with BioShock, all of those things, we were like, what will make somebody who plays this game be like, I can't use that? So, things like the bees crawling out of the arm and, stuff like that was just like, or some people just can't stand seeing things crawling on their hand, right? So the bees was double whammying. It was like they're crawling out of your skin and crawling on your.
And it's like one of the most memorable plasmids. It's so creative and unique. I really like that.
So bizarre.
Oh,
I don't know
I'm
if
sorry.
it was any good, to be honest. I don't know that it was any good, but it was fun.
Eric's got footage up of Nicolas Cage screaming "Not the bees" from The Wicker Man.
Ah,
Did
they're in my eyes.
I was wrong. Okay, this is better than what I thought. So it's cockroaches. If you have catceratophobia, fear of cockroaches, you can change the cockroaches' particle effect or whatever it is into glass. Because it's House Flipper, you just have to point an object at it and press clean. So whether it's glass or cockroaches doesn't matter, right?
Oh, you
So-
don't have to imagine you're like picking up cockroaches and stuff.
No.
It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a funny game to begin with. I have a couple questions we can
Turn
read.
them into spiders.
Hey, fuck you. You don't like cockroaches?
You just say it just cycles through terrifying imagery.
Yeah. It gets worse the more you
Spiders.
spell it, right?
Yeah.
Blood,
Drug
Your
needles.
mom saying something mean. A disapproving
heroin
parent.
needles. Oh my god.
Oh god.
Your
Sorry,
mom
Tina,
saying
go ahead.
something mean.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the scariest.
Onyxia donated $5 in the chat. Thank you very much. And says, I was very confused by Wartorn, the title, because I thought Will Wartorn was that kid from Star Trek.
Oh, Will Wheaton?
Yeah.
Will
Nice pun,
Wartorn.
Anexia.
Pretty
There
cool
you go.
name, I guess.
Will Warton's
Oh.
a great name.
Yeah, we need to help brainstorm ways for you to get through that social media filter.
Instagram issue.
Yeah. Dude, Paul, I hear you on that. I worked for 7.5 years on a series called Insurgency. You can imagine people weren't exactly jazzed to advertise that. We got demonetized, and it made creators not want to make videos. You shouldn't have that
Wow.
problem, but it sounds like you have a similar problem. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
what's kind of a bummer about it is one of the things we're trying to do with this game is create a safe world, safe for us as humans on Earth, to
Mhm.
talk about and explore some of the things that can happen during war times and some of the troubles that can happen. And so we're trying to create a place that a conversation can happen, and they're not letting a conversation happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what if it's as if, what if you censored This War of Mine, the game? You wouldn't want to censor that. It's telling a story and stories about war that should be heard, that are sensitive and important, but they're doing it to you. It sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, it is what it is. I also understand that this is a video game. The stakes are astoundingly low. There are people living through actual horrors, and we shouldn't have our social media be glorifying that in any way. So I get that side of the conversation as well.
Sure.
Change the O to a 0. It's my
pro
tip.
Definitely early aughts. Yeah, throw some numbers.
Yeah. Leet speech.
Do it in like leet speech.
Leet speech. From S6, they donated. I don't know what currency this is.
Australian dollars.
Oh, Aussie bucks. Aussie dollar bucks. All right, Bluey
Aussies
dollar
like your
bucks.
game because there's no
Weren't you
PvP.
just there, Tina?
I was. I didn't know it's A. All right, I call it Bluey dollar bucks. I have played RTS, RTT for 30 years. The genres never went away, but it feels like there is indie/AA resurgence in real-time games like Wartorn after about a decade of mostly quiet. Any theories as to why? I think we kind of touched on that with the publishers not wanting to take.
Yeah, there's some of that. I think it's also evolved. I feel like MOBA is where it sort of evolved to. What I think we're trying to do is reel it back in a little bit. Like we were over here with your StarCrafts that have, tons of units on screen all the time. And then Warcraft 3 was like, oh, the hero's really cool. And that evolved into your just worry about the hero in MOBA. And we're trying to like, hey, let's pull it back a little bit, but not quite so far. So that's why we've got these, squad-based. I only have a handful of things I have to control, but they each have a little bit of hero kind of elements to them with their abilities. So yeah, we're trying to freshen it up by kind of finding a middle ground between the MOBA end of that spectrum and your StarCraft, Age of Empires end of that spectrum.
I agree with all you said, Paul. I would give a shout out to certain really successful projects that helped people go, oh, real-time tactics games are cool. The one I'm thinking of is Men of War Assault Squad, even from them, like as far back to Soldiers, Heroes of World War II. I think certain projects did really well and made people go, oh, like there's more than one way to do an RTS. So much so that they're like, wait, let's just call this a tactics game. I would say that contributed as well. Trying to think of other good RTT games that came out in the past decade or two. But that was definitely one of them. I think that helped boost this idea. But I think the one you said is the bigger one, the lineage of Warcraft 3 innovating and then MOBAs and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, the reason we went all the way back to Myth in terms of, one of our inspirations is Myth was doing what we're doing now back in 98.
The OG.
Whenever it was. There was no base building. There was, no like tech tree that you had to go through. That was kind of that's how RTS works. And they were just like, no, I've got these really cool goblins and they blow the crap out of things and it looks really hilarious and there's physics and like they were way ahead of their time with things like physics and stuff in that game. And so we're trying to like bring some of that stuff back of like, let's keep it focused on the combat. But then all of our roguelite and Oregon Trails type stuff that we're leaning into is hopefully, when people are like, you're the FPS guy, it's like, no, really, I'm the genre blend guy. Like, Borderlands being the like evolution of RPG and shooter coming together, right? And now I'm trying to bring, real-time strategy and roguelite together.
It makes for a better experience. It really does.
Yeah.
And it makes it's a good. It makes sense. Roguelite meta progression systems, in this case, like a roguelite one, can fit into a lot of different games because the idea here is you're trying to create little building blocks of what you do, and then you unlock more things on a different level. There's having scarcity, right? All these things, permadeath, that can apply in a lot of different ways, and it's cool. Yeah, it's awesome. You're making a good point. Myth really did it first, and I've always wondered like how they got to that. My assumption is they were like, well, we need to put all of our effort engineering wise into the physics systems and stuff. And you know what? Our world is shitty. Nobody has time to build anything because the forces of darkness are destroying it all. So it's just going to be 7 or 8 guys in a survival vibe. going through the world, which it sounds like yours is too. But it's about the exploration of the war narrative and the ways people are affected by it.
Yep, absolutely.
Right on. We have another question in the chat. It's a kind of funny name. Squirtle Squad 420.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Friend of the podcast.
I gotta take a drink of water to Squirrel
Yeah,
Squad.
who doesn't love a
Thank you,
Squirtle? I mean,
Yeah. They donate $5. Thank you very much. And they say, my D2 Necro experience them. Please don't summon your minions. You're making the game lag. Me. Buy a better computer.
If you want to hang out with me, you got to
Yeah.
be prepared to not see the floor and have 5 FPS games.
Amazing.
Come on. I had, speaking of Terraria, we were speaking of earlier, I'm going to talk about it again. I spoke about this on the last pod. Do you remember I told you about that mod, the Archipelago mod that allows you to play?
Yeah.
Yes,
get
that
items
crazy
off.
thing.
So Paul,
how it works. Yeah.
I'll quickly intro you to this mod. Basically, it's a mod where you connect multiple games to it. So for instance, I'm playing Terraria, and a friend of mine is playing Dark Souls 3.
okay.
And all of his Dark Souls items are in my world. And all of my checks for progression in Terraria are in his world. So we both have to play the game getting stuff for each other, and it exchanges items. So in Terraria, the big thing is getting into hard mode by killing the wall of flesh. That's one of the big things. Killing the wall of flesh does not do that for me. It is an item in his game that he has to progress to and pick up to get me that thing. So anyway, it's a really cool mod and works with hundreds of games. It's amazing.
Wild.
It is, right?
Yeah, I want to make a video on it.
We need to do
it's super unique.
did a full episode about this.
I've not
Yeah.
heard
Gotta
of
check it
this.
out.
Is
Yeah,
totally
it's super, super cool.
wild.
But
I can't even understand like what this really means.
yeah, and how it works, right? I was blown
Yeah.
away as well. We need to cover it more because it's super unique. Anyway, I was playing Terraria, and the best thing about the Terraria run was that, yeah, it was my game that had his items in it and all of this bollocks, but other people, like my friends, could join my Terraria game and help grind and progress. So I was playing by myself, and then some friends joined, and as I always do, I play summons, as I was saying. But a friend joined, and he had never played before, and he has some motor function issues. He has a disability that gives him limited mobility in his hands. So when he plays games, he needs, if there's a chance for like a more subdued playstyle, it's what he kind of needs to go for. So it was his first time playing Terraria, and I had this summon build, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm so good. Then he came in and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go summons. And I knew that he needed to do it because of his disability, but I had to let go of my summons, and I like took my armor off, and I just gave it to him, and I was like, here you go, you can have this.
Oh, you're a good friend.
And he was like, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, no, it's fine, man. And I just like went to the chest and got a new build and got some new stuff. And I was just like, saw him running off with all his summons going, yeah. And I was like, I wish that was me.
You did the right thing, man. You weren't like, you didn't even hesitate. You weren't like, how bad are those motor functions? You were like, no, here you go, man. I'm sorry.
Oh my
Do you
God.
have proof of
deal
your
with it.
disability, sir? I need a note from your doctor.
Yeah, give me a doctor's note. Then I'll give you my necromancer equipment.
Oh my
Sounds
God.
like a Curb Your
Are you finding,
Enthusiasm
like,
moment.
weird shields and rings and stuff for Dark Souls and Terraria. Like I'm still trying to figure this
So
out.
it's
I think it's
okay. Yeah, it's in his game. So like think of it this way. So like when my friend who's in Dark Souls goes up to a fallen, do you know like in Dark Souls sometimes you can loot armor sets off of people
Sure.
or who are on the ground, right? You just find a lootable enemy, has usually would have 4 armor pieces. But instead, each one of those things that he picks up is an item for either my Terraria game, my friend's Minecraft game, my friend's Pokemon game. So like what would usually be a helmet is actually a Cyndaquil for my friend's Pokemon game, and it will send that Cyndaquil to the guy playing Pokemon. And when I open a
probably
chest,
play this together and stream it.
yeah,
should.
it's amazing.
He gets nothing at that moment until you find him a helmet in your
He
game.
gets nothing until I find him a thing. So it's this
Crazy,
constant
right?
ping pong of progression of just like, hey, I need to get into hard mode in Terraria to be able to progress. Where is it? And the amount of stuff you get in the game, you can then ask the game for hints. So you'll be like, hint hard mode, and it will say, hey, hard mode is in this area of this person's game, and they now have a goal of where to get to. So it's this constant ping pong of like, I need this, I need that. Can you get this? Can you get that? And it's so.
Let me ask something,
cool.
Jay. Actually, so if you're in your Terraria game looking for an item for your friend's Dark Souls game, I assume that you find Dark Souls items in Terraria, but it's using Terraria art, correct? Like it's an icon of a Terraria thing.
Sometimes it's like, so in this one we're playing 2 games at the same time because it gets even crazier. I'm playing A Hat in Time, which is a 3D platformer.
Yeah.
And in that game, what are usually Mario stars, effectively, they're timepieces. They change the logo to the archipelago logo that just spins. So you go and collect it, and a little pop-up comes up, and it says, "You've just found the Lothric banner for Jimmy, who's my friend." It's crazy. Like, just speaking about this mod series doesn't do it justice. We need to do some wider content on it.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to derail this chat on gushing about this mod, but it's real good, real good.
I think as designers, this is like a natural gushing point to talk about this because it's such a neat idea. I was just gushing myself about like the value of meta progression and layering and how that could apply to multiple genres. Here's another example of that, right? Like you add another layer to the play and you make it social and even asymmetric. How rare is it that you could find asymmetric multiplayer and have fun with that? That's cool.
Yeah, it's wild. Like the first runs we did was I was playing Hollow Knight, and the usual vendors you go up to in Hollow Knight that are usually selling pins and consumables and stuff like that. You go up and it's like, oh, you can buy a Power Star for Mario 64 for your friend, or you can buy a Master Ball. That was one of them. A friend was playing Pokemon, and his Master Ball was in my game in the shop. So
were you a good friend that time too, or
I bought him the Master Ball? Yeah, I bought him the Master Ball.
You're just a good guy. Okay.
Yeah, and then he messages me and he's like, "Oh my god, you just sent me the Master Ball." I'm like, "Yeah, dude." Like, it becomes this social thing, like asymmetrical multiplayer. It's really cool, really cool.
Yeah. I want to play Doom on it. I looked it up.
Doom is one of them.
Yeah.
And so is Cooking Mama. I just want to do that for shits and giggles.
You do Cooking Mama, I'll do Doom, and
get you a new recipe.
Anyway.
So
I mean,
cool.
if it doesn't support Doom, they're doing something wrong, right? I think I read the other day they can now play Doom in a PDF or something.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. You can. There is video
Runs
content
on
about it.
microwaves. I've seen someone run it on their little microwave display.
The curling iron.
Pregnancy test.
Curling iron.
Curling iron.
I
gotta look
there's
that
a
up.
curling iron.
Eric, do we have the curling iron of Doom? Well, there's the PDF.
Yeah.
Look at that shit, dude. That's
Like,
awesome.
what is happening? I can't even.
I love that so much.
What a good meme to
Great
have.
industry. I'm just doing some work.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not working on a PDF. I don't know.
Oh, is that
Oh, is
what
that
it
Excel?
running in Excel?
Yeah. Perfect.
Unbelievable.
Science, man.
Oh,
So
What
cool.
are we
dear.
talking about? I forget.
I derailed it. I'm sorry. I was talking about
No,
giving
it's
up
okay.
summons.
No, it's how are you guys on time? It's 11:44.
I'm
Yeah,
fine
I
with it.
feel like we might be coming to a. What do you think? Unless you guys want to keep going, how are people for time? Does anybody have a hard out?
I mean, I
fine.
could ask Paul one more question to end it.
Go for it.
All right, cool. Let's do that.
Okay. So you've been in this industry longer than any of us.
That's
you-
not nice.
I didn't bring it up to be mean. I want to ask, like, what are your
Just a
top
pause.
3 changes that you've witnessed within the industry in that time?
Wow.
That's a tough question.
That's really hard. Yeah.
Like, throw
Uh,
them out without any explanation, and then we're like, okay, bye.
Wait.
Top-
Let me ask something first. Sorry, Paul. This will buy you more time, hopefully. When you say top 3, do you mean like top 3 good or bad or just memorable?
Whatever he wants.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Yikes. Wow. It's actually pretty. I mean, I think just how can I not say like graphics in the 20 years, 25 years that I've been doing this? You know, what's the difference between a PS1 game and a PS5 game? Just put those 2 screenshots next to each other. Holy smokes!
Yeah.
You know, for me so that's amazing. It's a blessing and a curse, though. I think the blessing is, wow, we've got these games that look so amazing and can draw people in completely new ways. But games back when graphics were crappy had way more design in them. Way more design in them. If you guys have ever played Star Control 2, like that was a game that like blew my mind when I was younger. And it's like if you tried to make that game now with today's sensibilities, it would be like your GTA games that are like hundreds of millions and whatever, right? But you didn't have to worry about building all the graphics and stuff, so you could just pour more features and more mechanics and more, clever little, things, because we let our imaginations do more of the work through text and things like that, which I think indie is doing a lot of as well.
Yeah.
But our indie games look amazing now too, right? And a lot of that comes from like the quality of the hardware and the engines that we're using that empower people to be able to have their creativity come to life. So I think I kind of like graphics, and I think this engine stuff is probably one of them as well. With Unity and Unreal, I think the competition between those two has been really great for everybody, because it's forced both of them to make their engines more available to more people, which is just making everybody better developers and having access to really high-end features that they wouldn't have if they had to clackety clack it on their own, to make their engine, right? So I think that's been incredible. Over the years, I had super high hopes for VR, but it still hasn't quite gotten there for me yet. But I still think there's a future where holodeck is where we're gaming. I think that will happen. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I think that's kind of where that eventually gets to, whether that's through AR or VR technologies continuing to grow and expand. The thing that I said in an answer to like, what do you hope to do back probably 20 years ago, still hasn't happened, but we're getting closer, is I want to talk to my games. I want to go up to the NPCs in an RPG and just talk to them.
Yeah, some Skyrim mods have been dabbling in this.
By role-playing instead of clicking the couple of lines that we're allowed to say and, things like that. Why haven't we done that? Oh my God, content. Like, epically huge amounts of content. We're now heading into this AI world. I know there's a lot of, controversy and debate, and that's not really what I want to talk about, but you can foresee a future where we don't have to write, all of anything that anyone could ever imagine saying as a writer. And the question is, can we find a middle ground where we can have the creativity and wonder that writers bring, but also get some of the quantity that they could never provide?
Yeah. We're moving in that direction. I think the future is bright. It's just murky if you look at it in the macro, right? If you zoom out, it's very easy to get mad. A lot of things are happening in the industry. But yeah, let's not go into AI stuff. Being able to talk to games is like really high up on my list as well. Like super high up, mainly because I'm a loudmouth and I can't stop talking. So being able to just vent at a game is it's like my ideal. But yeah, some mods are doing it. Eric said there's a game called Knock Knock that's doing something similar to that. So I think we are moving towards that. But seeing that on a massive scale in a huge like blockbuster RPG or something, I think that's coming sooner than we think.
Yeah, it's probably sooner than we think, but it's still, I think, a ways away. One of the other titles that we're working on internally is heavily doing R&D into trying to change how we think about dialogue in games. It's something that's really important to me.
Ooh.
So, tease for a future.
Oh, we'll have to get you back. Yeah. We'll have to get you back on when you reveal more about that, because I want to dig into that
and talk about it. But yeah, dialogue my part of my pitch for this game is that dialogue has not changed in games in 25 years. It's time for it's time for us to change dialogue in games.
Hell yeah.
Can you say any more, or is it just it's too under wraps? It's
two under wraps right now. But a little tease for people. Like, so again, I'm not just an FPS guy. I also care a lot about a lot of other parts of design, right? And dialogue.
Clearly.
That I'm excited to explore in the next game. But first, we got to get this Wartorn out.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Very excited about where that's going as well.
Oh, yes. So, can you share a timeline or any sort of understanding of when you think this game will ship?
Yes, so we are definitely heading down the early access trajectory. So we will be doing an early access release this year. We are targeting spring. That's a long time window. So no exact dates or anything like that. We'll be doing some announcements to get more specific on that in the future. But yeah, it's not too far away before you guys will be able to explore the Isles of Talor and create this really exciting caravan. If anyone who is listening would like to play right now and see what it's all about, please check us out on Steam Next Fest. We are just Wartorn. If you search Wartorn on Steam, it'll come right up. And we're very excited to be working with our fans to make the game as great as it can be.
Awesome. It's been a lot of fun chatting.
Yes, absolutely. Please, thank you. Wishlist.
This is cool, Paul.
It's important. I want to say a little diatribe about wishlist. It sounds like it's just like on your YouTube. Like and subscribe. It really matters and really helps us in so many ways, and it costs you nothing. If you think you might be interested in it at all, we would appreciate a wish list. It really does help.
Massively.
Oh yeah. Yeah, people don't understand how valuable that is. It's in a lot of different ways. Wishlist Wartorn when you get a chance. Yeah, we already got some people wishlisting in the chat. Okay, there you go.
Beautiful.
Right
Nicely done, team. Awesome. Right. Well, I think that is going to bring us to the end of the podcast. Thank you, Paul, so much for coming on. It's been an absolute blast, as always, when we get super interesting, talented people on. Our podcasts go longer than we expect, and we just want to keep talking. So if you're down for it, we'd love to have you on again in the future to discuss anything and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Just reach out. I'd love to be a part of it. It was a lot of fun.
Beautiful. Awesome. So thank you to Tina and Mikey, as always, you wonderful people.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Tina, take a
what's
compliment.
that? What was that, Tina?
She can't take a compliment.
The British
It's
man is
hard.
complimenting you. He struggles more.
Yeah,
with this than
I'm
you
meant to
should.
be the one who can't take a compliment because of where I was born.
I'm a woman in game
And-
dev. Everything comes with like a critical eye. I'm just kidding.
Oh, but not from
I'm being
Jay.
sarcastic.
Not from
No,
our
I'm being
good pal
sarcastic.
Jay.
Me.
You're amazing.
Yeah, I apologize for Tina. I'm
And-
so sorry. I'm so embarrassed.
And also, thank you to everyone in the chat who's been watching live or listening to the podcast. As always, shows like this and everything on Second Wind is supported by your wonderful support on YouTube and also through Patreon. So thank you to all of our wonderful patrons. It can be as little as $1 a month, and you can keep this content coming. So from all of us here, Mikey, Tina, Paul, and Eric in the background doing wonderful production, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you real soon.
Wishless Wartorn. Bye.
Wishless
You
Wartorn.
better.
See you later.
Bye.